Good morning, YouTube. All right, so this week with Design With Me, I'm going to do a donut sticker, and I've already started designing them, and I have some old ones we're going to do, but I really wanted, and Kayla really wanted, to do like a weekly set, a mini weekly kit set, and have some pattern boxes, and she loves donuts, and so I'm going to make these for her. And I figured I'd show you along. I've already finished some, but I wanted to walk you through the process of what I did to make those. And then possibly in the next video, I might do pattern boxes. But if I don't, the video before this one, which I will put right here, or Kayla will, is all about making pattern boxes. But we'll recover that again and show you some new tips and tricks in the next video where I make patterns out of donuts, which will be right after this one, but a week later for you guys. Pew pew. All right, let's get started. So the ones that I've already made are right here, and I set them all out and put them in little artboards so we can have them all in one file. What I really want to show you guys is how to make yourself more efficient and where you're not ending up with 100 different files for donuts or whatever you're designing and you're making variations. How to put them all in one file but yet still have it be super easy to work with. So the first thing we're going to need to do is make that donut. And so we're going to just start with an oblong shape. And we can already tell that I'm not a super, obviously donuts are a little more beefier than this. So how we're going to fix that is go over here, we're going to take the A tool, which is the direct selection tool, click on the point on the left, and it's going to make the handles appear, and we're going to make it a little thicker, because donuts have a little rounder shape than this. And it's not going to be exact left and right, but that's okay because donuts aren't, perfectly symmetrical. So that's going to give us a little bit of goofy room to move around with. You might even want to, just to give it a little even more realism, tilt this a little, kind of have the donut have an angle, but I'm fine with these being the same. The edges are enough for me. So now we've got the outline of the donut, the silhouette of the donut, if you will. We can go ahead and give it some color if we want. Bring in just a basic color, get rid of the stroke. Maybe for these we could have a stroke, but we can always change that later. It's a little too dark yellow, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over here, double click while this is selected, and that's going to bring up your color menu. And this bar right here changes the lightness, so you can keep adding white to it, is how you can think of it. And over here, if you go straight down, it will add blacks. And we want to make it a little lighter, a little more of a cream donut. And we can change that color later, but for now, that's a good color for me. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to give it some frosting. And how we're going to do that is I'm going to start over here, and when you're pouring frosting on a donut, it's going to come off a little, right? It's got some thickness to it. It's not paper thin. So we don't want to just start here and have your frosting be right in line with the donut. You could do that, and I'll show you with like a purple. That would be fine, but it's the little details that really what make okay designs from good designs. And so obviously we're gonna want to start a little bit off of the donut and do that exact same thing we did. So we're gonna click down here with our pen tool and drag, and that's gonna make this point a curved point rather than a straight point. And we don't want to go too far, because anytime you pull really far, it makes the next point you're laying down really difficult to work with, even if you can come back and change it later. So the trick we want to do is try and get a good curve of the donut underneath it, so it's kind of matching the curve that we've got, but without trying to make those handles too big. And then you can click on your next point, and by holding the space bar, we can move that point around and see how that affects the line, and give ourselves a good old, like a drip, right? But we're going to want to come down a little. And then we'll come down here. And see how this is a sharp point? I didn't want to do that, but it happened because I clicked instead of click drag. So how you can quickly change that is take your direct select tool, shortcuts A, and select your anchor point. And up here, it will open up the dialog box for, this is your sharp point, and this one over here is for a curved point. And now we have a nice curved point there. Now to get back into the shape we're making, as you can see we're not done, you can find the anchor point with the pen tool and it'll give us that little slant line. You can click on that and that's going to continue off where you left off. So all we're going to do now is just keep low, high bump, low bump. And I know some people where they'll put their anchor points at the bottom and top, but I really find letting that curve happen naturally and just doing the in-between points really makes for better like drippage, and this one might come down a little farther than the other ones, you know, it got a little extra frosting. You can come out a little. And right now it's not super smooth, but I'll show you guys how to fix that too in a second. So now we've gotten to the other side. We're just going to hover right above it and try and match that curve. Now we've done that. The top is obviously going to be pretty smooth, so we don't need too much. You can even hold shift. What that's going to do is it's going to make this point where it only moves in 45-degree angles. We're going to hold shift and try and get close to where we want to be. So that looks good. And then over here you'll see a circle appears on the pen tool, and that means it's closing, or making the shape a closed shape, and that's what we want. And so that's, you know, 10 seconds, just a quickly frosted donut, and then I'll show you how to make these lines a little smoother. You can come over here, and in the side you've got this pencil tool, but underneath it is the smooth tool. And how you can access that is you can either alt-click, it'll go through what's underneath there, or just click and hold, and it'll bring up the side menu bar. So we're going to take the smooth tool, and with the frosting selected, we can just come in and you kind of just want to go over the lines a little. Big broad strokes are nice, and what that does is it tries to make it so there's less points on the line we're making. So instead of having 2 or 3 points to do a job, it will try to minimize that or help follow the line you're drawing. And so like here you can see it kind of gets into a weird point. You can just go over it until you're happy with it. Come up here, do some stuff like that. This point here should be a little more droopage. I might have to come in manually and push that back in a little so there's not so much of an overhang. But at least now it's 1 point. So I can just select that, use my arrow key, kind of tuck that in so it looks like it's dripping off of the edge, right? Maybe we'll do, we don't want to move the whole thing, we just want the anchor point. We can even do that over here a little, have it come off. So like that. So now we've just smoothed out those edges, and this tool is really, really great for, This tool is really great if you're hand drawing things and scanning them into Illustrator, because it will take your jagged edges or any imperfections that come into Illustrator when you're trying to make that change, and man, I'm saying a lot. I'm so sorry. This tool is really great when you're hand drawing and you're bringing in your shapes and drawing into Illustrator and smoothing out those edges that you've been drawing and smoothing out any imperfections that happen in the process of turning something hand drawn to digital and making it look a lot nicer and smoother. So I already think that looks like a great covered donut. It might be coming down the sides a little too far, but because we went up and over, we can just click on the background and push down, and we can make the bottom of that donut come out a little more so the frosting isn't so dominant. And I think that looks pretty stellar. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to give ourselves a nice little donut hole. How we're going to do that is this part right here determines the angle of the donut, so the tilt. And the reason that is if I do something like this, if you did a perfect circle, it would be like you're looking straight down at the donut. But the more flat you get, the more tilted the donut is and the thicker it gets. So we want a little happy medium. So we're going to do something right about there. And that's, I think, pretty good. And to line it all up center, we'll highlight everything. Take the horizontal align and just click it. And although it didn't move much because I was pretty dead on, it just lines everything up nice and smooth in center, and That way we're mathematically accurate. So that's good. The next trick I'm going to show you is to you don't want, obviously the frosting is going to come inside the donut a little, so we can just click this and hit Shift and Alt, and what that's going to do is Alt is going to duplicate it, Shift is only going to let us move it directly down. So I think right there is pretty good, and what I'm looking at is this space right here between the top of this one and the top of this one. That was how thick I was making the frosting, and how I'm going to do that is I'm going to highlight both of them, come over to my Pathfinder tool, and use what's called Divide. And what that does is, you see how you've got this mini Venn diagram going on? Anytime a line crosses a line, it will create its own shape. So instead of working with two ovals, I now have the top part of the oval, the bottom part of the oval, and the middle part. And I can take my direct select tool, because they're going to be grouped together when you do that. So this way we can just edit them independently. And I'm going to remove the bottom, and now I can come in, I'll color match by using I for the eyedropper tool, select the color of the donut, and remember when I said moving down here adds darkness? Well, you can go ahead and do that, move it down, and that's going to add a little shadow, so like a rim on the donut. And that's a little subtle, so we might want to make that a little more noticeable. So we're going to take our A, direct select, select it, drag that down, make it a little darker, and there you go. You've got a nice edge on that frosting. You're seeing the donut. You might even be able to make this a little darker using the same method as before. Sometimes you can, increase the color. If it's real light, that might help. And just bring it down a little. So now that's the inside of our donut. It gives it some depth. And we can come in and do something really cool too, is take this frosting cover we made, holding down Alt and Shift again, we'll drag it down just a little, right about there. Control Shift left bracket is going to send it all the way to the back, and I don't want it all the way back, I just want it right on top of our donut. So although it doesn't look like we've done much, we can select that, use again the eyedropper tool, pick the color you picked up here, and do that, and now you've got kind of like a two-layer frosting. Maybe it's a shadow that's laying on top of the donut because it's that sauce or that frosting is curving off of it a little and adding a little bit of shadow below it. So this is really, a nice fun way to give a little more dimension, add a little more color into what you're doing. Now we've got to make a really important decision here. Are the sprinkles long or are they round? It's a tough call. Do we want little polka dot sprinkles? Nah, I don't like that too much. We're going to give it regular, nice sprinkles. And how we can do that is, instead of using the ellipse tool, we'll use the rounded rectangle tool. And you only need to make one. Great thing about sprinkles is they are uniform in size. So as we make different colors and things, we won't have to change the shape of them, so as we move them around. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep using the Alt drag tool, and I've got my V or selection tool selected so I can adjust the angles, and it'll bring up these handles on the edges that we can rotate around. And whoop, zooming in helps, because then you get a little more control over rotating the items. And we're just going to sprinkle this thing. Another way to do it is just take one and put them all over, even if they're all the same angle, because we can adjust that later. So something like that. It's a little denser on this side. Maybe add a couple more over here. I want to make multiples of these and change their colors. So we can come in. I'm going to highlight this and shrink it down. So now I'm going to take this, highlight everything that's there, Alt, Shift, drag it down, and using Control D, it's going to make a duplicate of whatever the last move I did in Illustrator, which was obviously copy and put down. So that's how I'm going to get this great spacing here. Now I've got 3. I'm going to highlight them all. Alt, Shift, Drag. Space it out. You know, that looks pretty good. And Control D again. So these are all identical. And so what we're going to do is we're going to highlight all the black boxes. And I did that by holding down Shift and selecting them all. Now for me, I do this so much, I built it into a shortcut. But what I'm doing is I'm going to turn these boxes into artboards. And how you would do that is you go to Object, Artboards, Convert to Artboards. But you can see I use Control E, and that turns them into artboards. And what artboards let us do is as long as we don't move any of these things inside these squares, when we go to export and say export my artwork into a JPEG or a PNG, I can say don't export them all together, export each artboard individually. And because the artboards and the artwork, so the artboards being these thin lines, artwork being the donuts, are in the exact same spot, when they go to export they'll be exactly the same, but maybe the colors are different. Now I don't want this big artboard that naturally came here, so we're going to go to Window, Artboards. It's Artboard 1, and you can tell because it got darker when I selected it. Artboard 2 is going to be this guy. Artboard 1, just take that and drag it down into the garbage. And now we've got a cool grid. And I'm going to go through and I'll add color to the sprinkles. I'll go through and, you know, just highlight this one, make this like a light pink. Take the bottom one, make that a dark pink. That way it's kind of, again, you know, following the same color path. Make that the same color I've got here. Maybe make some of these chocolate donuts. Save. So I'm saving the Illustrator file, and this is really cool because now I've got all these different designs in one file rather than having 100 different files. I have to, oh, is it donut 1? Is it donut purple? Is it this or that? I can go through and I have it all nice and neat here. I'm going to go to export, and I've got it already set up. Pulls up the name of the file we saved. It's a PNG. But we want to use artboards. And I have all artboards selected, so that's going to be everything with this little black bounding box. But let's say I want to just adjust one of these. I can go into that viewfinder like I showed you earlier, so Windows, Artboards. And if I just wanted to save this one, I could come down and say, oh, it's Artboard 3, because when I click it, it's black, or you can even just select the artboard. But we want to do Artboard 3, so when I go to Export, File, Export, I can use artboards, and I can just say I want to use artboard 3, or I made changes to 3 through 4, but we're going to want to use all, and we'll go ahead and click export. It's going to show you the first artboard, so that's this guy, and say this is how it looks. Transparent background, is that alright? And we're going to click OK. And it's going to take the setting for the first one and apply it to everything else there. So when we go to open this up, Donuts 2, sign with me donuts, now we have all these files exactly the same but with variation, and that is a great way to crank out a bunch of designs. And there, we made a donut. And what did it take us? No longer than 25 minutes, and half of that was me stumbling over myself. So thanks guys for watching. I'm going to take these donuts, or at least the ones I've already designed because I've already got them colored how I want them. I'm going to take those donuts and put them into pattern boxes next and show you again how to make pattern boxes and go over that a little more articulate and a little better explanation, because there's some new things that you always learn as you're going through. And thanks for watching. If you like these videos, leave a comment, like the video, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and if you're not subscribed, you're silly. But thanks, and I'll see you guys next Thursday.